If the world hasn't stopped moving, your money shouldn't slow you down. With Bloombank Africa, you are always connected, wherever, whenever, in many ways than one. So whether you're sending funds to family, paying for goods and services, settling bills, or just making sure you've got some cash at hand, Bloombank puts speed, simplicity, and security in the palm of your hand. Transfer funds between your Wave or AfriMoney account and your Bloombank account anytime, anywhere, because your money should flow at the pace of your life. Visit your nearest Bloombank branch today to link your account. Bloombank Africa. We make it happen.
Sant Yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokku dara.
Jah Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Farafenni, Jah Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The Jah Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, Jah Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, Jah Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. Jah Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The Jah Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today. Joining me now is Mr. Ousainou Allen, civil engineer, educationist, philanthropist, and leader of the National Alliance for Accelerated Advancement, or NAFAA. His movement seeks to channel frustration with the current administration into a new political alternative rooted in education, self-reliance, and national renewal. Well, today we ask him to share his reading of the political moment, the voter registration exercise currently on, the state of the economy, and the continuing tragedy of Gambians lost on the high seas. Most of them are topics, Ousainou, that we dealt with, during your last visit here. The fact that they still persist, and we are talking about them, means that either very little has been done to address them or nothing at all. I will ask, what you think. First and foremost, welcome to the program. Starting with the news about, the resignation at GRTS, what do you make of it?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Thank you to your staff for inviting me to West Coast Radio once again. I'd like to also greet the Gambians who are following this program. I also am one of them who actually follows it regularly. There's a lot going on in the Gambia, especially in the lead to the elections. And it's actually heightened the tension. And the tension should actually not be artificially heightened because elections comes with its own tension. So if you're artificially heightening it, then it has possible consequences, either pre or post-election. And regarding the journalist, yes, journalist whose case has been discussed widely on...
So you've been following
yes.
the discussions around him?
Yes, social media, and we read about his resignation. I suppose it was done yesterday. Mm-hmm. I think it's a consequence of abuse of power. From the reading of it, someone who should have just stayed in their lane, if you're a National Assembly member, stick to assembly matters or anything that relates to that. And whoever is responsible for the hiring, firing, disciplinary matters, whether he fell short of his TOR at his job, it should have been the business of those people whose responsibility that is. But if I try to transcend the bounds within which I should be operating into yours, then there's going to be consequences, either positive or negative. But in many cases, it's usually negative. And we've seen that the consequence is negative. And it's going to actually, it started shining a very bad light on the government, especially given that there's lots of push and pull between the government and the media fraternity of late. And it's very worrying because it seems like a very slippery slope that the government is taking this year. I don't know if they've read the room and realized that, you know what, fuck new FIPO. Otherwise, rek dañoo ñàkk nguur bi ni.
Yeah, but FIPO usually comes out of desperation. You're not suggesting that the government might have, as you said, read the whatever and seen that maybe, things are not going their way and they are just acting out of desperation now, trying to control the media. The GPU would say gag the media. And now you have, a journalist of state media coming out and saying uncharitable things about his treatment, reflecting what, in some of the wording, reported is accurate, suggests, the situation in government regarding, the media.
You could see that in many cases. This is just one of them with this journalist, but there's other cases where they have overstepped their bounds. And it's, like I said, they've read the room. They've seen that leading to these elections, their popularity is dwindling at a faster pace than they had anticipated, regardless of how many ribbons they cut. So it is
ribbon cutting, suggesting how many projects they launch.
Yeah, you cannot do everything at the last minute when you should have done it systematically or structurally. And I think this is also going to reflect in the polls. I think the best people to seize the most of this is the opposition. That's where we come in. Okay.
What's your reading of the political climate in the Gambia currently?
There's lots of undercurrents going on, lots of moving pieces. What is constant is the growing unpopularity of the NPP government. But also, there's this tendency that if Gambians do not learn from the 2016 coalition discussions and subsequent coalition candidate, we might miss another milestone, which it might be difficult to recover from. Gambians are frustrated. Standard of living is dwindling. Youth unemployment is at an all-time high.
If you were asked to provide, empirical proof of that, do you have figures to back up your claim?
Yes.
What's the percentage of youth unemployment?
Youth unemployment, no, I can't give you a percentage at the moment. But we are employers. And we are youth leaders in society. And we do engage youths on a daily basis. And in terms of their skills that is required in what is needed for the country to move, we are not doing well in terms of equipping them to accompany the country in the direction that it's needed. In terms of crime, in terms of drug usage, in terms of those taking the perilous journeys through the back way, we are seeing numbers that are growing on a daily basis, and we are seeing numbers that are also indicative of wartime casualties in terms of those that are either unaccounted for or those that are reported to have lost their lives at sea. So it's not a very the picture is not, it's very gloomy at this present stage, and you can put the blame on the government for not really addressing these matters when they should have, and how we should have addressed these matters.
When should they have addressed the problem and they missed the opportunity?
From day one.
2017.
2017.
How? They were just coming into government. They were not. In fact, when they came in, they said there was virtually nothing in the coffers.
And you ended up doing one of the most extravagant independent celebrations ever had in the country. Where was that money taken from?
So that was a contradiction, was it?
That was a contradiction. You cannot also promise reform, come in and do the opposite. Reforms should be structural. So reforms should have put the citizens at the forefront. I'll give a typical example of reform that should have been done that is affecting the citizens, but the consequence of the lack of reform is actually helping those elected officials. That is what should have been the civil registry audit. If we had done a thorough civil registry audit, then we should have been able to determine who's the Gambian, according to the constitutional provisions, who's a Gambian, who's in possession of Gambian documents, verified, and what do we do to mainstream or streamline the documentation of Gambians, whether you're born, whether you reach a stage where you need to acquire an ID card, a passport, even a death certificate or marriage or naturalization. All of these things should have been done in such a way that it becomes very seamless and decentralized. So the person born in the farthest ends of Gambia could attain their birth certificate, if not on the day of birth, just a few weeks prior, after their birth. Also, we have an education system that is accessible across the country. Entry into these educational institutions should have been also a requirement for the presentation, to present your birth certificate or certificate of whatever form to show that you're Gambian in order to be able to benefit from the free education that the government offers to Gambians. If we had done this, made it seamless so that you put the Gambians at the forefront, you would have seen that all these problems that we're faced with in this electoral supplementary voter registration cycle would have been averted.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the IEC has flagged irregularities in the registration process. So how concerned are you about the integrity of the process itself?
These are all symptoms of what I just mentioned. Because what we've observed is we have a governance system that is more electoral cycle type of governance as opposed to Gambians' first type of governance.
So they only prepare for once every 5 years?
You could see that, because if attaining a voter's card is as easy as walking up to a queue, presenting a document, if you don't have it, you can just walk to an alcalo and just prove that you are a resident of constituency, and you'll get an attestation for free for a voter's card that will elect elected officials or our politicians. If they can vote those or put those in law that has a direct benefit to them, but the Gambian who needs an ID card for their everyday affairs will deposit their ID card, pay $450, wait for 8 months, sometimes more than that, to attain an ID card that is needed for their everyday affairs. It's a bit lopsided.
I think that's a fantastic point to make. Or even a driving license.
Driving license.
They take your money.
Passport.
You go months and months and months, sometimes a whole year around.
Yes.
Working with the receipt. And if you lose the receipt, they tell you you'll have to pay again.
So the citizens
are... So the voter's card is free.
Yes.
But the ID card, which should have qualified you to get the voter's card,
yes,
you pay for.
So we are just an afterthought. Everything that has to do with them is prioritized.
That's a good point. I never saw it from that angle, but that's a very valid argument.
Yes.
It's a very valid argument.
And this is why we need to elect the right people, whether it's in the executive or at the legislative level.
Okay. So what reforms would you propose, A, to strengthen, our voter registration process, and even, make it just as easy for every Gambian, to acquire their documents as it is to get a voter's card?
Like I had mentioned earlier, you need to do a civil registry audit, because we are now...
So for somebody who's hearing the expression for the first time, what's a civil registry?
The civil registry is birth...
civil registry audit.
Yeah, so the civil registry is the birth, it has to do with the birth, marriages, deaths, those
records
documents.
Of that.
Records
of births, marriages, deaths, and what have you.
And they have also... Audit is looking at
the
what we have.
Okay.
Who obtained it correctly and who didn't. Because we just saw news of a Nigerian lady with Gambian documentations, 4 or 5 passports from Gambia. And it's not an isolated incident. We've heard people who are working in Gambian embassies across the world also lamenting these occurrences. So it means that our passport or our identity documents are out there for the taking.
So you conduct the civil registry audit, and then what?
Once you do that,
yes,
you need to also institute certain reforms. That is, birth certificate at birth.
Okay.
Decentralize it. If maybe traveling all the way to certain centers might become too strenuous for a newly a woman who's just given birth, try and make it available where they are.
Well, so if we can send immigration officials, right around the world to give documents to Gambians, why should it be a problem to send somebody to the furthest, reaches of the country to?
And look at the timing. It's all election related. It's all election related. So the emphasis on ensuring that Gambians get the documents to vote supersedes everything else. Supersedes everything else. So it's highly questionable. So once you do that, you make the identity documentation easy to access once the authenticity of the person's claim of being a Gambian is ascertained. Someone's passport, make it easy to access.
Should it be an alcalo who should ascertain, the authenticity of my Gambianness?
They could be part of the process, but it shouldn't be down to them, because we've seen that it's been abused over the years. And unless we
Precisely why I ask.
Yes.
Can't we have, a better way of proving someone's nationality?
In the long run,
normally what you said would have taken care of it.
Yes,
all right.
Yes,
at birth,
yes,
you get your documentation and all of that, because the facility where you were delivered, there should be people to bear witness.
Yes.
To your being born here and so on and so forth. But failing that, leaving it to one person to say, yes, Ousainou, fii la juddoo at nangam to so and so parents. They could make it up.
Yeah, that's
equally. You could come and be a genuine Gambian, and for some reason they don't like you. They decide no.
Exactly.
You don't feel when you were actually judoed here.
Exactly. So that's the you've given them the arbitrary authority to determine who's a citizen or who's not, and that should have been the responsibility of the Gambia Immigration Department, because they could do the investigation. But the alcalos could be part of the process because they're also part and parcel of that fabric of society where they know a lot of what pertains in their various locations.
Quarter to the hour. The economy is under stress. What do you think of the Gambian economy?
The reason from our observation why the economy is not doing too well is we are preoccupied with the semblance of development as opposed to...
Semblance of the development? So
yes.
We are not actually developing?
No, because if you want to develop, you build those foundational pillars for development. Foundational pillars for development, number one, nothing precedes the building of the human capacity to move the country forward. Because it's the people who should move the country. You cannot govern over a people who don't even understand what direction you're taking the country. You just call them, them inaugurate Pelenele. Learn more link with the greater project of government. Can Monuko explain? Daralarek.
Well, but how do you teach that to people?
Okay. You expend lots of effort to really highlight what you've achieved as a government. You spend lots of money to show that. If you had also expended as much investment into letting people know what their rights are, who they are, what the direction of the government is. If you go to the average Gambian right now, tell them what is the strategic direction of this NPP government. They just, then they will tally. Tally Bunyo Bill Nono is a part of a greater transportation and logistics network that adds value to the farmers, that adds value to the tradespeople, that adds value to the fishermen.
That's what they tell us these things do on a daily basis.
Yeah, it could be. It could be the case. But if you scrutinize it, it's more of building for the sake of building. Because, in terms of development that is visible, there's no bigger project that can really become, the people can see and appreciate than infrastructure, road. But that infrastructure should be part of a logistics network that will build the structural economy. The structural economy is agriculture. So agriculture, how could you build a robust agricultural system? That is, you need to also determine those products that are viable for the country's food sovereignty. We've been preoccupied with groundnuts. And if you look at the history
as our only cash crop.
Exactly. If you look at the history of groundnut, it wasn't necessarily primarily for us. We use it, we eat it, that it was meant to be a cash crop so that we can sell abroad. Yes. We need what you call core crops. Core crops, eventually rice became a core crop. So that's rice, that's dugub, maize, those ones. Because these are everyday foods that we eat. And you can transform them to create bread, which is an everyday food that we eat. Once you transform these things, you will not dismiss groundnut, because groundnut is an amazing food product that is not only good for food consumption, but you can also use the byproducts of groundnut for many things. You could use it to replace. I think I heard from the newspaper headlines you were mentioning, charcoal.
Yes.
You could use it to create briquettes that can replace charcoal.
Sure. It used to be done here.
Yes.
It used to be done at Saro.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's the same Gambia. It's the same soil. We just need to revive.
But different government.
Different government, different
approaches.
We need to, what you call, appropriate our development. That is, utilize the local resources that we have to make the best use of. There was a time when we used to make roads from Horipine.
Yeah.
And they're durable roads. We need to start utilizing the gravel for our buildings so that we can also help our the sand, at least the mining can be minimized. So these are structural matters that can be prioritized. But as I mentioned earlier, the Gambian that is educated, the Gambian that is aware about the strategic direction the country is going, will naturally accompany the country. And you cannot better do it than introducing it into the school curriculum. But the school curriculum needs to be done in such a way that it creates an identity in the Gambian. So from early, you'll have the child that believes that, okay, I'm a Gambian. We're living in a modern nation state, and it's not going anytime soon. So we need to live that reality. If you step 1 foot into the next country, they are going to call themselves citizens of that country. That's our reality. So we are Gambians today. So we need to understand that. That doesn't minimize the fact that we can coexist with other nationalities. But no other nationality can come and fix our country for us. So if you assume that identity, you need to now learn what will make that country thrive.
Okay, so let me ask you, how is NAFA engaging with communities, all right, to raise their awareness about their civic responsibility?
I think this interview is the most I have criticized the NPP government in an interview, because for us it is a two-sided coin. It is the elected officials, but it's also talking to Gambians about their responsibility as citizens in this country, because you cannot govern effectively over an uncultured people. So how can the people become cultured? Is through discussions, is through reflecting about who we are and how we can build societies that are conducive for a prosperous Gambia, because the elected officials are all from communities.
Sure.
So if within that community we build a system where we collaborate, the tailor is opening a shop there. If pursa bu mo jënda woñ bu mo jënda yëpp jëndee na ko ci area boobu noonu, you'll build a circular economy within there.
Sure.
So it will also encourage others to open businesses that can also serve the community. So we create a business ecosystem there. So the school owner can also be patronized by those in the area. Now, if they help him also pay school fees because it's a problem, they can also add value in the education system that they give. Then it will also help us in crime prevention, because we now work closely in identifying those bad elements within society, find ways to work with security services, because they cannot do the work in isolation. They'll only become more successful if they work with these communities. Mm-hmm. Once we do this, we build a society that is resilient, that is collaborative, that has identity, then it will translate into those people we'll be electing into office. But if we build a society that is very individualistic, if those people from that society go into office, they'll not think of anything that will benefit society. They'll only see themselves.
You mentioned crime there. A lot of people usually politicians in opposition, think that crime is on the rise, it's on the up. What do you think?
I believe so, because we have, I don't have the statistics.
Dr. Cisse would demand data.
Yes, we can make it available, but we are right now preoccupied with a lot rather than just memorizing statistics.
Okay,
we are talking to the average Gambian.
Let's hear your thought on crime.
The reason why we're saying crime is on the rise is because the use of drugs is on the rise, and the consequence of that use is usually crime. And you speak to people, and people are feeling more unsafe out there. Just yesterday, dama doon génn rek pour dem julli ji gis ñaari xale yi leen tuuti ma leet sas pour julli ñaari xale di xeex kenn ki dafa ko mbaxana moromam si koñ bi. It's a normal occurrence amongst youths, but eventually I realized that one of them is amongst those kids that are in the corner there preoccupied with smoking. So if we are more proactive in our engagement with the youths, engaging them, mentoring them, advising them, because what I did is I broke them up. I told them, nañ leen dem julli ji ñoon ñëpp ñaan ñu doon xeex yëpp kuy saaja ku saajut yëpp ñu ànda man dem waaye bala buñ paree ba ma jël lu kooku bëggoon a saaja dama ko dencoon suma poos ma laajte ana keneen ki ndeke moom daw na dem
maa du box la bëggoon a saaja
am na dafa bëggoon a jël mbaxana bi jaay ko waaye that's the reality. We need to look out in our communities for each other, be very vigilant about crime, because from what we see in terms of interventions, in terms of reports from the police, unless we're living in a stage and in an age where crime was suppressed during the earlier regime because of probably fear of publication.
Yeah.
But
there were so many things, between 1994 and the end of 2016, that were just swept under the carpet.
But there's a caveat there, because you could also say that was done from a central standpoint, where it was done by by the state or the state apparatus, as opposed to decentralized, where it's happening in communities.
Okay. You talked about being involved as a political movement, being involved in so many things. First and foremost, what's the situation regarding your movement? We hear movements are not allowed to present candidates and be involved in campaigns and all of that, because you can't be registered or something.
Yeah, so we wrote an opinion piece on that. Hopefully it will be published soon.
You haven't copied us in yet, have you?
Sorry?
Was it copied to us?
No. It will be on the newspaper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, have you said you wrote and it's not been published yet? So why wouldn't you send to us? Here we are.
I can show you.
Okay. So what's the
it
position?
actually is addressing that very matter, because if you look at the form that is given to any aspiring political party by IEC, it asks you to indicate who the president is, the vice president, the treasurer, and the list goes on.
So the leadership.
The leadership,
yes,
which is the executive.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to choosing the leader? People take different routes. Some people just choose the leader. Some people elect the leader. You cannot elect the leader without going through a formal setting, and you could call it whatever you wish. Mm-hmm. It is also a requirement to have a party secretariat as well as regional bureaus. It's also a requirement to present 10,000 signatures, sponsorship signatures, 1,000 minimum in each of the 7 regions.
We'll have to make this quick. I have only 5 minutes.
How can you attain that without exposing yourself? Because the Gambians are also not fools. You cannot come to them and say, my party nangam, wala dama buga neka party nangam, dama buga nga sign fini, you just sign. Did it. Fanga fesal sa bopa. Fanga wane sa bopa. You trust la. Ñena ñi da nga dem ci ga duñ ko def ci bes bis sa dañoo am pour dem be trust la ñu doora sign. So it's almost like you're telling the person or the entity, you cannot, you need this to be this, so you need to satisfy all of these requirements in order to be a bona fide political party.
Let us understand this problem more. So what is the IEC preventing you from doing, preventing NAFA from doing, for instance?
We've submitted, so maybe the target is not really us.
Okay.
But you could see that what they're saying is you should not engage in matters that are reserved for political parties.
Like not organize a congress?
Like a congress. As I mentioned earlier.
Not declare a flag bearer?
You know, declaring a flag bearer is a matter of its own. You need a precedent. You need a structure in the movement or the political party. Flag bearer is for elections. But the entity itself needs to operate. And for the entity to operate, you need that structure, you need the executive. So you cannot tell him that you cannot have this executive, you cannot be a bona fide political party unless you have an executive. But you cannot also become an executive unless you go to Congress in certain cases. But if you go to Congress, then you are mimicking a bona fide political party. It's like an oxymoron. You cannot be this unless you are this, but you cannot do this to get there.
I'm not in, the political sphere to understand this. And just finally, what would you like to tell the audience about NAFA and how you're preparing for 2026?
Like always, we want the political space or the political actors to respect the Gambians enough to go out there and talk to them. What we've observed is we spend more time talking amongst politicians as opposed to going out there to talk to Gambians. Because at the end of the day, it's the Gambians who will be voting. So the energy we expend or the resources we expend into this coalition building, talking amongst each other, spending all that time together.
Are you part of those coalition talks?
Yes, you get invited into all of this.
As long as
you're yeah, we do go, but we don't commit. We don't commit.
You don't commit?
We don't commit.
You don't believe in coalition?
No, we believe in coalition. But we believe in a particular type of coalition. We believe that if you don't share the same ideology, share the same...
These parties that are trying to come together,
yes.
Do you see... do you see them sharing the same vision and?
Yeah, I think everybody needs to communicate what their vision is. I think it needs to also become part of the political discourse to say, this is my political ideology, this is my economic program. Because if what brings you together is a common enemy, what becomes of the situation if that common enemy is no more there?
We've lived through that already.
Yes.
We've experienced that already.
So unless we learn from the mistakes of 2016...
It was all about getting rid of Yahya Jammeh.
Yes. So what should...
We got rid of him and then started, asking the question, now what?
What should be is how to make Gambia a prosperous nation should be the thing that should bring us together. The common enemy is just a stumbling block that you need to just remove.
Do you see any chance for a united opposition front?
There's a strong chance.
Okay.
There's a strong chance.
So people who dismiss the possibility don't know what they're talking
about? No, because we are also people of reason. And I've not seen unreasonable people within the political space. We just need to be mature enough and selfless enough to accept that, in the
and
greater
you see that
interest,
maturity and selflessness in all the parties trying to come together?
You cannot maybe say all, but you could see a greater majority of them are mature enough to accept that, you know what, at some point, not everybody will be the leader. We'll have to choose someone to lead. And, you know, everybody will contribute in whatever way they could.
Something just crossed my mind, and very quickly, if you can say this in 1 minute. What did you make of the CEPRAS opinion poll?
The CEPRAS opinion poll, I was trying to decipher it, but I was on a journey at the time, so I didn't really have time to...
So you still haven't done that?
No.
We'll bring you back here.
Because
because it's being given all sorts of interpretations, eh?
Yes, but I think the first observation I had is Gambians are not very happy, generally okay with the state of our democracy, because people can freely express themselves. If that's what many people describe democracy to be, I have my own observation of what democracy is. But in terms of the economy, it's gloomy, according to what I first looked at, but I wanted to delve deeper. That's why I don't just jump into statistics, because, you know, if you're doing your study, and that's one problem. When it comes to data, we're not very equipped as a country in presenting data. So you try to do your research and you get this number here. Sometimes you go to an official document and you cross-check it with a minister's pronouncement or at the National Assembly, and you see 3 different figures. Yeah. So I'm a bit careful about.
But when it comes to
numbers.
data, trust GBOS. I mean, you know, compare your data with what GBOS might have on it. Not politicians. You don't expect somebody from government to come here and agree that crime is on the rise, and agree that, Gambians are suffering, the economy is so bad, Gambians are dissatisfied. You don't expect that from, you know, a member of the government. And you don't expect that either from a member of parliament from the...
Associated with the government.
Exactly. So, I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, so we should not take those things as seriously. Ousainou, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
If the world hasn't stopped moving, your money shouldn't slow you down. With Bloombank Africa, you are always connected, wherever, whenever, in many ways than one. So whether you're sending funds to family, paying for goods and services, settling bills, or just making sure you've got some cash at hand, Bloombank puts speed, simplicity, and security in the palm of your hand. Transfer funds between your Wave or AfriMoney account and your Bloombank account anytime, anywhere, because your money should flow at the pace of your life. Visit your nearest Bloombank branch today to link your account. Bloombank Africa. We make it happen.
Wépp lay fay.
Sant Yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokku dara.
Scan to pay moo neex, no problem, 0% no charges. Kon yóbbaale ko boy dem. Scan to pay moo neex, no problem, 0% no charges.
Jah Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Farafenni, Jah Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The Jah Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, Jah Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, Jah Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. Jah Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The Jah Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today.